where we left off the other day, so you might want to get this down. Okay, the temperate latitudes, there are 4 or 5 different climate zones, which are usually mentioned, and they tend to exist in the middle latitude. So from about 30 degrees north and south of the equator to about 60 degrees north and south of the equator. I really wish I had my clicker. So if anyone knows where it is. I'm 99% positive. I left right here because I was watching the weather radar. Tyler, you didn't do anything with it, right?
No, I didn't.
Seriously?
Yeah.
He's lying.
We're gonna have to search everyone. We're gonna have to search
What happened?
The good news is 4th period, the lunch period, so I can hold you guys after until I get stop playing. Anyways,
All right, Tyler.
last point that I want to make is that if you were to take a map of the world population and put it on this map right here, you would find that the majority of the people actually live in these zones. This is why I just wanted to use my clicker, the laser pointer, so I can point it.
I don't know what's on here.
Western Europe right there, about 1 billion people live in that green slug right there. In Asia over there, in China,
Wait.
you have about 2.5 billion people. In the United States, especially the eastern United States, we have about 250 million people. Down in South America, in that region right there, you have your major population centers. You have Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, Montevideo, which is the capital of Uruguay, and Buenos Aires. A lot of people in Africa live down in that little area right there. Johannesburg and Cape Town. Well, Cape Town's not actually in that area. And then the population of Australia all live on the east coast of Australia. Very few people live in the western parts of Australia. So, the first of the temperate climate zones and the coldest of the temperate climate zones is called the humid continental. You might want to write that down in your notebook. Humid continental climates are the ones that we think of that have the 4 seasons. Originally, in these climates, you had your deciduous forests, and generally what you get here is you get your typical 4 seasons. You get 3 months of spring, 3 months of summer, then 3 months of fall, then 3 months of winter. The trees all lose their leaves, but this is the colder of the 2 versions, and it is not uncommon for this region to have snow cover on the ground for sometimes 4 months out of the year, because it's a relatively cold climate. But then again, during the summertime, it can be quite warm and humid as well. You can get up to 85, 90 degrees. Very rarely do you ever get temperatures of 100 degrees. Some examples of cities you might find in this type of climate zone: Seoul, South Korea, Beijing, China, Ottawa, Toronto. They're all in these areas. Minneapolis, Minnesota. So these are the. This is the first of the temperate climate.
No, you're not in it.
Second up, we have our. What we call humid subtropics or humid subtropical climate. This would include places like, say, Nashville, Tennessee, Atlanta, Georgia. This would also include what's it called in China? Shanghai for China. Would include Sydney, Australia. This would be Rio de Janeiro. What? Victorville? No. Victorville. What do you get here? You still have your 4 seasons. The trees still lose their leaves. However, if it does snow, which it does, the snow will only stay on the ground for a couple of days and it'll be gone. So you get some snowfall during the wintertime, but not too much. And the summer tends to be short, and most days the temperature gets up above freezing, even in the coldest times of year. Where if you live in, say, Ottawa or Toronto, you can have 4 or 5 days in a row
Like,
where temperatures will never get up above freezing.
they're kind of
Okay. So these are the humid subtropics.
special.
The humid continental
Special.
tends to get more rainfall equally throughout the year, where the subtropics tend to get more rainfall during the summer months. One of the reasons for that is because of all the tropical storms that develop in late summer and early fall. And sometimes you get hurricane landfalls, like in Charleston, South Carolina, and places like that. So that's our humid subtropical.
Sorry, were you?
We also have our plains, or sometimes called our steppe, or sometimes called prairie. Here in the United States, we call those the Great Plains. Very flat, and they're covered entirely with grasses. Why is there no trees on the Great Plains, or very few trees? Because it's simply too dry. This is a very dry climate. They only get a little bit more rainfall per year than we do. And unlike us, all their rainfall falls during the summer months, which is a good thing, because if you've got grasslands and you have a lot of rainfall during the summer, then you can grow lots of crops. So about 10% of the world's landmass produces about 80% of the world's crops. And by this I mean stuff like wheat, rice, barley, corn, soy. They're all grown on in this type of climate zone. Okay? And there's one growing season during the summertime, and that is it. You know, it really sucks that you can't put something down for 5 seconds and have some. Okay, right now we're already staying 1 minute after class for lunch. Just warn you guys. All right.
Bro, who's gonna release those? Who's release those?
All right. Next up we have our climate zone. This is called the Mediterranean climate zone, and this is the smallest of the climate zones of our planet. It only exists on the western side of continents. Notice it runs down through California. San Francisco is in this climate zone. We're in this climate zone. San Diego is right on the southern tip of this climate zone. You start getting down into Mexico, and it becomes much drier, much more deserty. Perth, Australia is in this climate zone. All of the Mediterranean region around the Mediterranean is in this climate zone. And just in southern South Africa down there, they're in this climate zone. It's a dry climate. I'll get to it in a second. It's a very dry climate zone where most of the rainfall occurs during the winter months. You think about it right now. We are in the winter months, right? We're just entering early spring. So for us, we have hot, dry summers, and we have a brief rainy season, usually January, February, March, and that's it. This is what the natural vegetation looks like in California. You guys have probably never seen this before, because most of it around here is being cut down. Most of it around here is being cut down and replaced with palm trees and
Things that they
eucalyptus trees
kind
and stuff
of,
like that.
they make gardens.
This is California state bird. This is the California condor. Yep. Most people don't realize it's not like an eagle or a prey animal, it's a vulture. It's in the vulture family. Yep.
What does that do?
All right, next up. And this climate zone can fit into the tropics or into the temperate zone.
So you can
The main thing about deserts is they're very planet, which gets 10 inches of rainfall or less per year. However, if you really think about it, it's
Spam-like
also not
things
just
that
about
they do
how much
with
rain you get, but it's
people
about how
with the
much of that
guns.
water evaporates
You know what I
off the
mean?
surface. So my definition for desert and a lot of other people's is an area where
What are they called?
precipitation is far less than the ability for the area to evaporate. Deserts can have huge temperature ranges per day. For example, if you go out to Victorville this time of year and during the daytime, it might be 100 degrees, even this time of year, 104, 105 degrees. During nighttime, the temperature might drop all the way down to 50 degrees. You could have a 50-degree swing in one day. That never happens here, right? You know, you wake up in the morning here, 60 degrees, you go outside, lunchtime, it's
Message.
74 degrees.
Oops. No, I
Um,
can see you. Message retract. What's that?
Deserts can exist anywhere on Earth. They tend to exist about around the 30-degree mark, anywhere between 25 and 45 degrees north and south of the equator. However, if you have a mountain range blocking off all the moisture on one side, that also can make deserts or places more deserty, shall we say. Cool. If you guys ever want to know about our, we have two local deserts here. We have the Mojave Desert. And if you want to know, this is the iconic tree of the Mojave Desert. It's called the Joshua tree. And this is our other desert. It's called the Sonoran Desert. And these saguaros are the keystone species of the Sonoran Desert. If I was to take a saguaro cactus and plant it in this desert, guess what would happen to it? It would die. This is a colder desert. This is a warm desert where temperatures never drop below freezing. Cactuses, most cactus species, are not very frost tolerant. They can only, like, you put a saguaro cactus in freezing temperatures for like more than 5 hours, and all of the cells in its body will explode. They just can't deal with cold temperatures. 2 more climates to get. So far we've done three Arctic, 4 temperate, and we have 2 more, well, plus the deserts. And then we have the last 2. The last 2 are the your rainforests and your tropical savannas. Now, if you guys look right,
You
guys look up at the board, the areas in red
against Google.
are tropical rainforests. The areas in dark red, or like almost like a black color from your perspective, those are the tropical savanna areas. Now, technically speaking, right on the equator, it rains all the time. If you move a little bit, like 5 degrees north and south of the equator, you begin to start having seasons where you might have like a 2-month dry period or a 3-month dry period, but it typically rains all year. Now, by the time you get down into the tropical savannas, it's warm all year round. The temperature usually never drops below like 65 degrees. However, you have an abrupt rainy season and an abrupt dry season.
It's cool.
Come on, Frank, you go back a little bit. Well, that last slide was just, I was just introducing you to the 2 tropical climates. So, here's our savannas. Most people, so I mean, the continent that has the most savanna on the planet is clearly Africa. And it is mainly grasslands. Why? Because like I said, it rains for half the year during the summer months, and then during the winter months, it's bone dry every year. So it's too dry for most tree species. I'll leave that up there for a minute. Tyler, do you have my remote control?
You have to hit the.
Right now, everyone in class is staying a minute after class. And right now, there's no penalty just for getting it back there, but there will become.
Give it back.
No, give me $5 you can
When you came in my room, I didn't have this stuff.
I didn't know what was it? What was it?
I don't have it.
Tyler's handle. I got you 30 bucks
Oh,
right
that's
now.
what he's looking for? Oh, then why did I say that stuff on the thing? I didn't know that's what he was talking about.
Went to Brokeback Subway. And then I went to get, yeah.
What?
Well, you never know.
Oh, you're on it too? I've recorded everything.
Hey, Tyler, I got 43 bucks right here. Think about it.
You heard that right? Huh? You heard that right? He said 43 bucks.
And 75 cents.
You check your pocket like a smart person would?
Huh.
Wait, what's he even looking for? I don't know.
All right, last but not least.
No, I do not.
Last but not least, we have our tropical rainforest. They, generally speaking, exist right on the equator. In some areas, they can kind of extend farther away from the equator, where they're in a coastal area, where there's maybe a mountainous range behind them, and a lot of moisture will come in, and you'll get the rain shadow effect and a lot of rain on one side. An example of this
Wait, who sent it to?
would be along, you see Central America up there where there's a lot of rainforest extending up even into southern Mexico. But generally speaking, they're right on the equator. It rains constantly throughout the year. Rainforests in some parts can easily get twice the amount of rain to fill this room. That's a lot of rain. So it rains pretty much every day, half an inch of rain